In this two-part series, I show how I make a hard cap wig for my vintage Rootstein Sandy Shore mannequin from 1967. I show a unique way how to set the synthetic hair and how I recreate Sandy's signature 60s bob hairstyle. She is bald and beautiful and a little grubby, but there is no point cleaning her or reviving her yet. That is a topic for another video, so make sure you check that one out also. Here I'm making a hard cap double shell wig, and the double shell is ideal to create the volume for Sandy's 60s bouffant hairstyle. For this first stage you're going to need some plastic wrap, some kitchen towels, some rubber bands, white craft glue, sharp scissors and multiple pieces of buckram. So wrap your mannequin in the plastic film just to protect it from anything that might spill on it, and I'm using some rubber bands to keep that tight behind the ears. And this is the buckram, and we're going to be using the diagonal movement in the buckram that helps form a round shape. I pre-soaked it in warm water for a few minutes, squeezed out the excess and placed one corner down her forehead, one going down the back of her neck, and see when you pull on this buckram it shapes around the round curve of the back of her head. I've used a rubber band to just keep it tight at the back, and you want to try and keep it as wrinkle and pucker free behind the ears as possible. I'm securing that with another rubber band, and I'm pulling this behind her ear, across her face, twisting it over and catching the other side of the ear. Now this corner, I'm basically pulling it down and trying to smooth it through as much as possible, trying to get rid of any little folds and puckers. This is going to get cut back quite high, so it's much easier than what it actually appears. And this is what it's like after it's dried, a single shell of dried buckram. We're actually going to do this again because we need a double shell for the base of this wig, and I'm going to do exactly what I did before, which is wrap her in plastic, and this time I am using white craft glue. Rather than taking it off, I'm leaving it on there and just massaging in the white craft glue. Apologies for my glowing yellow hands. In the front, I've sort of grabbed it into a little bundle and I'm pulling it towards the middle and rubbing in more glue. And we want to pinch out any of those little folds that might happen. And if you snip by the ear, it just helps it manipulate around the ear shape a little bit better. And this is what we end up with. Now I'm taking the one that dried earlier and I'm going to lay it over the top of this. Now this just helps because the buckram in a single layer is not quite strong enough, so this is a double layer. I'm pushing it into that wet glue, and then I'm putting more glue on top of it, and I will do it again so I get two double shells of buckram. This one, which is still on her head, obviously I am designing the hairline, which is quite high above the eyebrows, but at the temples and the sides of the head it's pretty much in a usual kind of place, and that just depends on what hairstyle you're creating, but for a bob it's fine. Now for the volume on the crown, we want to create a round line which just sort of touches the tops of the ears, goes around to the front hairline and across the back behind. And I'm filling this with cushion stuffing, and this is where it's going to sit. I've secured it in place temporarily with a rubber band, and I'm now adding some 5-minute epoxy around the front, but I'm going to wait until the glue is slightly chewy and tacky before I push it down into the bottom layer. It keeps it off your fingers, but it also prevents anything seeping through onto the mannequin head. Now there's a gap in the back here, and I've purposefully left that. I'm now going to just cut a line up just an inch or so. Do the same thing with a toothpick, just add some 5-minute epoxy, wait for it to become chewy, push it down when it's ready, and I'm holding it in place with some rubber bands. Now you can take it off carefully, not scratching the mannequin's paint. Remove, and this is what we've made. So that volume on the crown actually means that we can do less hair manipulation. Now this is the hair. I'm using synthetic hair extensions, and those clip-in types. I've stuck them on the washing line and I'm just giving them a good old spray with hairspray. And I've rammed the end where the clips are into my kitchen drawer, and I'm just pulling it up and spraying some more spray, wrapping the ends with a medical gauze, which is nice and lightweight, and that is going to help me tuck these ends around a Perrier water can. I'm sure any can would do, any soda can. Now wind it down, and I'm using a pintail comb to just tuck those ends under, winding it down. And I'm using more medical supplies here, a bandage, an elasticated bandage, and I'm just going to wrap that over the top of the hair. And those little butterfly clip things that come with bandages are great for this because they hold it all in place, but you could use another rubber band as long as it's not too tight. You don't want to create any lines in the hair. And I do this multiple times. And now for the magical part. Fill it with hot water, boiling hot water from the jug. Works really well, and then you just sort of sit there, and once they've cooled down, you can empty the cans, and this is what we end up, a nice curve on the ends of the hair. Now I've covered the mannequin with plastic film, put rubber bands behind the ears, and I'm putting a pink silicone swimming cap over the top, which is great because nothing sticks to silicone. So I could just cut the hair off like this, but I actually want to take advantage of these nicely tapered curved ends that the hair extensions already have. So what you do is you plan the length of the front of the bob by pulling the hair across the top of the head, tie it with a rubber band and cut it off in the right spot. And you want to do that with a color that you can use for highlights as well. Now I'm making these top closures by taking the two colors and I'm mixing them together, and I've just placed them on the top of the head, coming from across the other side, just trying to visualize where the ends of this bob are. And you also want to make sure that you're thinking about the direction that the hair flows in. They obviously shouldn't touch each other, and then once they've dried, they don't dry completely, but once they're 50% dry, you can peel them off, collect them, put them aside, and do it again. You want to do this multiple times because we need to use quite a lot of them to fill in the top and create that middle part look. The silicone cap is brilliant for this because nothing really sticks to silicone, and so you can go making these closures over and over, and you're not going to damage the mannequin. So here we are, we're getting quite a collection of them now. Now I'm going to make some just plain brown closures, and after you've done this for a while, you're going to end up with multiple lengths and multiple color mixes. So it's a good idea to kind of organize them, put them aside somewhere, knowing that the longer ones that go in the very front, the ones that go towards the back of the parting are probably going to be a little bit shorter, and just stay organized is the key. Now the small sized closures have been made, I'm going to turn my attention to filling in the underneath of the wig. Here I am taking the same curled clip-in hair extensions I used before and putting a bend at a right angle into it at about 4 inches from the ends. I do that by bending it over a metal knife handle, and I either place it in the steam of a boiling kettle or running it over a domestic clothing iron, obviously set to an appropriate temperature for the hair you're using. And that's what gives us right angle with a curve, and that's what actually helps the bob sit under. The bend sits right on the hairline like this. So I'm just making sure that that's where it is sitting against the buckram base. The bend should basically be right on the edge. Applying a thin layer of glue. I'm just going to do one side, so from the center to just behind the ear. Let that fall, and pushing it in with a wooden spatula. And I'm just putting another little bit of glue on top of the hair as well, so it's well laminated onto the base. Now, I should be wearing gloves probably, and I should be encouraging you to wear gloves, but I have very old, chemically resistant hands that can handle this. So pushing more glue on top of the hair, trying not to let the stringy little pieces that come off the glue get stuck to the hair. It's not going to be good later on when you try and brush the hair through. And once it's dry, you cut off the excess. And I'm sorry about my shoulder being in the way, but you'll see what I'm doing there. I've just cut the hair off, and I actually have enough hair to do another layer, so I'm going to economize and do that again. Now we are going to cut the guideline, which lets me decide how long the bob is, and a hairdresser would use a razor, but we're going to use a box cutter because you may not have a razor. Now take a little snip at the point behind each ear, make sure it's even, and use your comb as a measuring tool. And if you take those two little pieces of hair and pull them towards the center, they should meet in the middle, and if they meet in the middle, it means you're even. Take your box cutter and carefully slice the very central part of the hairline, and then work towards those guides that you initially cut. And don't cut your fingers. This creates a nice soft finish to the hair, and it also helps the hair turn under. If it was cut off very bluntly, it would not make it easy to get that hair to turn under. So just checking the length, and now I have a piece of the off-cut hair, and I'm just testing my irons just to make sure that the hair can handle it. These are actually GHD irons, which are quite strong, so what I've done is I let them heat up and then I unplug them and let them cool down for about 30 seconds before I put them on the hair. That seems to work quite well. And another thing that's quite helpful is holding the hair in the same position as it cools down. That will just help that set snap in there a little more efficiently. See how I'm not whipping my hand away straight away? I'm kind of holding that hair bent ever so slightly. Because how it cools down is just as important as how it is heated up with synthetic hair. There we go. Just holding that nice shape in there until it's a little bit cooler. Do a few tests beforehand just to make sure you know what that point is where the hair is at its most malleable. And now I'm just going to do it again with the next piece of hair. Pretty much exactly the same, just the hair's a little bit longer. So a rubber band to help hold the hair in place. And that's the line where I'm going to be attaching the hair. And this time I'm using a very fine volumizing crimping iron set on low temperature, and it's not 100% necessary, but I find it gives the final result a fluffier, fuller texture. I'll put a link down below if you want to know where to get one of these. Obviously you do this in all of the hidden parts of the hair, you don't really want to do it on the surface. And I know this is a bit long-winded, but I just show you here how I place the hair, and after this we can do it in bullet time, a bit more sped up. And the key is to actually use as little hair as possible but get a really good distribution. You don't want to end up with a great big heavy bulky wig that can't stay on the mannequin's head. So synthetic hair is actually quite heavy. If you use too much of it, it can be problematic. Here we go, and I'm just making sure that that's giving me a nice turned under look to the bob. Even though this looks a little bit long-winded and painful, it is actually much easier than trying to style this into a wig that you say have cut into a bob as you traditionally would on a human. It's much easier to kind of assemble it like this, I think, anyway. And now I'm just carefully lifting it up, clipping it with a sectioning clip, and I'm going to put some glue on here and push it into the hair. If I can just ask you to click the thumbs up if any of this is new or interesting to you, please do it now so you don't forget. I used to have dreams of doing this for a living and charging for a service, but I've decided that is not possible where I live now. So now I've decided to spill my secrets on YouTube. So please help me make this channel a success. Good idea to sort of comb it into place while it's drying. And once it has dried, which is probably only about 15 minutes at the most, it's obviously not completely dry, but enough to be able to cut the excess off the top. Just move that rubber band up a little bit for the next layer of hair that I'm going to glue on here. And just like I did last time, except obviously the hair's a little bit longer. And I'm working my way up to about level with the ears, using an extra rubber band just to secure everything. And I'm lucky I did that because one of the rubber bands actually broke. Now moving to the front, I've just planned where the fringe is going to be and the angle that the hair is going to fall around the face. I've just drawn a triangle where the fringe will go, and this is the length that I've decided I want the bob to be in the front. So I've just taken two pieces of hair and I'm gluing them in as guides, and that is the point that I'm working to when I'm assembling this wig. I'm just using the little pieces of hair that I made previously that have already been glued. And just constructing that front hairline by putting a little bit more glue on the closures and pushing them onto the wig base. And here's what we end up with. Now we're going to focus on the fringe, and the fringe is pretty much in the same technique that I did that first layer of hair. Obviously a little bit shorter, and I am crimping the hair that's going to sit closest to the base. Using that rubber band to help me keep it in place as I'm going. And this time I'm actually just going to put the glue on top of the hair and push it into the base with the wooden spatula, rather than putting the glue on first and then letting the hair sit on top of the glue. It's just a very thin, fine layer of hair, so it's quite easy to get that glue pushed through it. Once it's dry, I'm going to do a little bit of a fringe trim. And I'm doing this now because I can clearly see the guideline, what I'm creating. The guideline is the first cut that you make, and it's what everything else is based on. It's much easier to see it when you don't have any hair clipped up above it in a sectioning clip. Another thing you don't have to wrestle with. And that's why I'm doing it before there is any hair stuck above it. And synthetic hair is quite hard on your hairdressing gear if you are a hairdresser and you're making one of these wigs. Don't use your best scissors. They won't last very long. And that's dry, so I'll cut the excess off, and I can use that same piece of hair to do the next layer in the fringe. And I think you get the picture now what I'm doing. I haven't crimped this one quite so much because it might be a little bit more visible on the surface of the wig. And I'm just texturizing the hair a bit before I even stick it on here. Stick it on, sorry, I should say apply. Right, now this time I'm actually putting the glue under. You're trying to avoid having too much glue on the surface of it. I mean, it's unavoidable mostly, but a bit of hairspray hides that later on. And now I'm just dropping it into the glue. And combing the hair, the ends of the hair into place before I start pushing the glue through the hair. You want to make sure that fringe is all sitting in the right direction before it's glued into place, especially when the hair's a bit shorter like it is in the fringe. I probably should have let the glue become a little more tacky before I tried doing this. You can see how it's come through and penetrated the top surface of the hair, which is not ideal, but hairspray does a good job of hiding this, and of course the hair will be dressed out over the top of a lot of it. Now that's dried, I'm going to release the rubber band and I will be cutting this off, and I'm going to try and cut this off rather than just chopping it off very bluntly. I'm trying to purposefully cut some angles into it so it tapers off quite softly. I'm going to put some more glue on it and push it through into the base. Flatten it down with the wooden spatula. And now I am moving back to the sides, and I'm pretty much doing exactly the same as before. You can see I've crimped some hair. I know approximately how long it's going to be, thought about how long it is in the front, thought about how long it is in the back, and now I'm just going to work my way around gluing this hair as I have done up until now, just working my way to the top of the head. Take a little bit of hair off the top there because I think I've left it too long. Really focused on not putting too much hair on this base underneath here, because I'm going to have to put quite a lot of hair in the top surface around the parting to try and make sure that none of that base is visible, so you kind of make up for it by putting a little bit less hair in the under layers. And now I'm just working around in a sort of a circular fashion, just building the hair up slowly. Now I've gotten to the temple area, I'm putting some big chunky blonde pieces there, and yes, they are kind of extreme looking at the moment, but they will not be this visible in the end look. You'll only see them in the tips at the front of the bob. In part 2 of this hard cap wig making series, I carry on filling in the hair. I create the top closure that gives the finished style its volume. I also create the middle part, and I give it a haircut.